So I hope that you had a chance to get to know people by doing the bingo. We did have a winner, and interestingly enough, our first person was Sam, who is Van the Man, and the second was Peter, or Christopher, who's playing Peter, who they're competing for Rachel, so that's, for Kate, so that's kind of funny. Sam, here you go. It is a collection of our movies. Now, I must warn y'all, we get better as we go along. So do not watch Class of 91 first and judge us accordingly. We have learned a lot. So what I'd like to talk about is first, just a little bit of introduction to us. We made our first movie in 1999. It was bad, really bad, because we didn't know what we were doing. And then at some point, Fred went to school for this. It was not in any possible way in my imagination. I thought that was something that people off in Hollywood did. I was a writer. I was a teacher. I loved drama. But movies was something new. And then at some point I said, okay, God, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I thought I was going to go into ministry, which surprisingly, I kind of ended up in ministry because for a person who wanted to speak to the world, God has used me most to speak to the world through silent movies, which has been kind of interesting. For those of you who don't not know, our last two movies were silent. People ask why, and the reason is I write really good cheesy dialogue. Really cheesy. And so when we were getting ready to do the Good Book, we were discussing how to make it not cheesy. How we could show, not tell. And we were sitting in a restaurant in Franklin, and all of a sudden Fred's like, what if we literally showed, not told? Literally. And we had done music videos before, and I had done interpretive movement at church, so we were used to telling stories visually. And so we said, what if we, is that possible? So one day I sat down and I started writing a story without any dialogue, and we discovered that it could be done. And so we had no idea what the response was going to be when we did Good Book. Trying to explain it is the hardest thing. Well, no, it's not like those old 20s movies where it's black and white and people are acting real crazy. No, it's like a music video. And then I thought, okay, that was a one-time fluke. And so I started writing Providence, and before I noticed, I was writing it and there was no dialogue in it. So we're like, okay, we've done it again. And we've been very, very blessed with that. God has used that. When we finished, we were trying to figure out what to do. We knew it was a hard sell. There's no words. People don't know what to do with it. But we found on AMC, on their website, it had where it said, submit your movie to AMC Theater here. And so we said, okay. So one night I filled out the little form, and we laughed the whole time. We're like, oh, this is so funny. I can't believe we're doing this. And an hour later, we got an email that said, okay, we'd like some more. We'd like to know your marketing plan and the whole movie. And we didn't have a marketing plan. We didn't have any kind of plan. So we made some cute little pie charts and some little graphs. And we said, this is what we're going to do. Don't have a lot of money, but we're going to be real creative. And lo and behold, they accepted our movie into the AMC Independent. And then they said, okay, pick which theaters you want it to be in. And so I got on Facebook and I said, okay, people, what theater should we be in? And one of our lead actors, Rich Swingle, who lives in New York City, he said, you should submit to AMC Empire. That's at Times Square. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Rich. Yeah, right. Okay, seriously, people, where should we submit this movie to? And he said, we've got nothing to lose. Submit it. And we did, and it was one of the first theaters that accepted us. Later on, we found out why. Rich and his wife moved to New York City in that Manhattan area back 2006, I think it was. And right after they moved in, they went to go see a movie there. And as they were coming down the escalator, he prayed, Lord, someday let me be coming down this escalator after having seen a movie that I was in. Now, what's really amazing is he had never been in a movie before. He was a professional actor who traveled around doing a one-man show, but he had never been in movies. So then he started doing movies, and he's been in a lot of movies. but he's usually a smaller role. He was in Beyond the Mask, which was, pretty big. He was in Alone Yet Not Alone, which was nominated for an Oscar. And then he was in Ours. Those weren't in Empire. Ours was. And so it's like, wasn't that so cool that God could have, had Beyond the Mask, could have had Alone Yet Not Alone in there, but he took our tiny little silent movie and answered Rich's prayer. And so it's just been such a blessing. And so that's why we are honored to have you. And I hope that y'all have cool stories like that by the time it's all over as well. Now, one thing that we discovered with doing silent movies is how to tell a story visually. And so I know a lot of you, when you are looking at parts, the first thing you want to know is how many lines are there? Okay, who's been guilty of that? Counting how many lines a part has. Yeah, that's what actors do. Well, what we discovered is that you can be a great actor without ever saying a word. And like when we were with the Truth Awards, the director told me, he said it was so funny, the judges, when they were judging our movie, they said, well, how do we judge it? They don't even talk. And he said, well, just watch them and see if you can figure it out. And lo and behold, they discovered that, yeah, they were good actors. Our silent movies have won 15 acting awards. And so with all that in mind, I want y'all to know that even if you don't say a word, you're going to be telling a story. And so what we're getting into today is telling a story, not just with words, but visually, of immersing yourself, of becoming a character, and, just really telling the story however you can. And that's what we're going to work on. Now, what I want you to do is you all should have a name tag, correct? It has your name. I want you to take the piece of paper out, I want you to flip it over, and I want you to put your character's name. Now, some of you are going to say, I don't have a character's name, I just go to the Memorial Day service, or I just sit in church. Well, you know what? Every single person that's sitting in church, every single person that goes to Memorial Day service has a name. So I want you, if you don't already have a name, to create a name for your character. So go ahead and write your character's name on the back. And crew, I guess crew, you can be the same name. But let's have you sitting with other people so you can get to meet some other people. I know. If you can listen and think of a name, you're welcome to do that later on. But by the end of the day, when you're talking to people, you're going to be that person. I mean, if you've always thought, I'd like to be Hank, then you're now Hank, okay? Unless you already have a name and then you have to stick with your character's name. You don't get to change that. Okay, now, what I want you to do is I really want you to think about your character. And I know some of you, you're like, all I'm doing is sitting in a church service, okay? That's all I'm doing. I'm not really a character. And that's wrong. You are a character. Everybody is. You're all this. You're not going to be yourself. You're whoever this is going to be. And so I really want you thinking about that and how to get into it. Now, as you immerse yourself, one of the first things that you need to do is be thinking about your character and doing some background, thinking of who is this character? Why is this character sitting here in this church service? Do I want to be here? Do I not want to be here? Am I here because I feel an obligation? Am I here because I have been sitting on this same pew for the past 20 years? And, I want you thinking about your character and why you're here, because it's going to affect what you do. Because if you've got two people, they're both sitting in church here. One of them is like, so excited about Jesus. Praise God, I'm so excited to be here. And then the other person is sitting here thinking, this has been the worst week of my life. I have got so much to do. Why on earth am I here? I should be home sleeping. Okay, do you think those characters are going to look different? Completely different. So it's going to affect you sitting there. There is no right or wrong. Our church service is going to be people who want to be there, who do not want to be there. The only thing is you don't want to be doing something that's so distracting that it takes away, If you decide your character has had enough, you don't get the option of just getting up and leaving. That would be a little problem. So just to clarify, don't get that much into it. When you're thinking about, your backstory, I want you to think about how you're like this character and how you're different from this character. And you're going to draw from that. And no matter who you are, you're going to be kind of like them. You're going to be kind of not like them. And so you're going to try to piece together. Now, in the Good Book, we had Apollonia, who was playing a young wife and mother whose baby dies. Now, Apollonia's never been married. She's never had a baby. She's obviously never had a baby who died. And so it was, obviously a lot of acting for her. And so what she did is she tried to draw from how is she like this character. Well, she's never been married, so she doesn't know what it's like to have, what it would be like dealing with a husband when your baby has died, the tension. But she's gone through difficult times before. And so she drew from that. How did I feel when I went through this? How did I react to that? And so that's what I want you doing is thinking about, your feelings. Now, be creative with it. Have fun with it. For example, you may be at the wedding of one of the weddings and you wanted to marry the bride years ago. How is that going to affect you? You're sitting there thinking, oh, she could have done a lot better with me. So I want you to have fun with it. I don't want you just being yourself. I want you to, create this whole character, whatever you are. And whatever you are, there's going to be parts of you in it. And this backstory that makes sense for your character. Now, Mimi, who is playing Joanna, Mimi is a sweetheart, such a sweetheart. Well, if y'all have read the script, Joanna is not exactly endearing of herself. And so when I was talking to Mimi, she's like, okay, I'm trying to draw, from this. And so we were talking, I said, the thing that motivates, and I want everyone to know this, because it's not necessarily evident in the script, but the thing that is motivating pretty much everybody in this movie, can y'all think of one emotion that's kind of motivating everybody? Anybody want to guess? It's there, but not in everybody. It's there, but not all the time. Fear. It's fear. People are acting out of fear. The guys are afraid of going overseas. The girls are afraid of that. And Joanna is afraid of losing her son. She's afraid of losing her son at the wedding. She's afraid of losing her son in the military. And when people are afraid, sometimes they do crazy things. If you are a mother, you have probably in your lifetime done something really stupid because somebody messed with your child. You have gone into mama bear mode and afterwards gone, I can't believe I did that. But you were acting out of an instinct, a protective instinct of fear for your child. And so throughout this, that's what there is in Summer of '67. And as I wrote it, what I want people to see, if you read and you study about '67, in that whole time period, there was a lot of fear. People were afraid of what was happening. People didn't understand it. They didn't agree. I mean, the hippies, were they not acting out of fear? They were leaving reality because they were afraid of it. They were protesting because they were afraid of that. And so I want people now, is there any fear in our society right now? Have y'all seen people dealing with that? And I want people to see that, you know what? People were afraid then. People are afraid now. God is there all the time. And so even when we're dealing with this fear, even when we're dealing with these difficult times that we don't understand, then, God is there. There is still hope no matter what happens. And so as I was talking with Mimi, I'm like, okay, your character is working in fear. And so, she's like, okay, I'm working, on how to make that. And that was one thing, like when we were looking at the auditions, like when everybody was dumping the cookies in the garbage can. When you first read it, you're thinking, oh, it's because these are bad. But see, the reason she's dumping them is because as a mama, she sees that her son has married a woman who is taking care of him. And she's baking him cookies. And, you know, as a mama, it's like, my son doesn't need me anymore. He's got this woman that's taking care of him. And so she's acting out of fear, not out of meanness. You know, we see Joanna as mean, but she's not really mean. She's just a mama who's scared. And so, you know, with each of the characters, looking at, you know, how does fear motivate them? And chances are there's not a person in this room who's never been afraid. If you are, I'd like to talk to you afterwards, and we'll talk about what you do. But anyway, now, I want you to, and what's really cool when you immerse yourself is if you become your character, when you get on set, you're going to be different. You know, you're going to act different. I remember seeing a thing, reading an article, and if you've ever watched Friends, and there's Phoebe who's like, you know, plays a real Dutz. And I remember reading an interview with her, and she was saying how when people would talk to her, they would talk real slow because they thought she couldn't understand, you know? And that's how good of an actress she was. And so when you immerse yourself in the character, you're going to become like that. Now, Pat Binkley, who played Flowers for Fanny, she was Fanny. And I can say this, Pat is Fanny. If you have seen Flowers for Fanny, Fanny is quite a character. Well, so is Pat. So Pat was basically playing herself. I mean, she's just a character.
I didn't come here for advice. What I need is flowers for my grave. And if you can't help me, I'll find somebody who can.
But what's so cool is when we were doing Flowers for Fanny, you know, she got into that. And I had one guy who watched the movie, and he was like, she scares me. Is she really a nice person? You know, I'm like, yeah, she's really nice. And so we had a behind the scenes where people could see her really nice. Well, what's so funny is then in Providence, she played the grandma, and Grandma Rose is so sweet. And it was so funny with reviewers of like, oh, she seems like such a sweet person. I'm like, Pat's both of those. She's the scary person, she's the sweetheart. And so I want you getting both of those. Now, when we were filming Getting Into Character, when we were doing Flowers for Fanny, one of our characters was a lawyer, a country lawyer, and Rob Wilds. And Rob, this was our first time working with Rob, and he was playing this lawyer, and this lawyer is like all business-like. Well, I gotta tell you, we were all scared after death of Rob.
She wants flowers, he's agreed, everybody's happy.
But he doesn't care about her.
She'll be dead. Nobody cares. Now, if you'll do what I said, we can take care of this matter.
He was that lawyer, you know, and we didn't want to mess with him. And then when we did, he was in The Good Book, and he played a laid-back farmer in his backyard, and he's, you know, chasing in his yard after a little boy who steals overalls, and it was like he was a different person. He was like really sweet and everything. And then when we did Providence, he played the dad, and it was kind of a mixture of in between. He was, you know, tough dad and all that. And if you've ever had the privilege of working with Rob, you can see that he just becomes that character when he's on set. So I've brought him today, and I'm going to ask him some questions. We're doing a panel discussion. You normally have a panel, you have everybody together. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm having a panel one at a time, so I guess technically it's not a panel. But that reminds me, before I do that, so be thinking about that, Rob. Before I do that, when you're immersing into character, some of you look a little funny right now. You're dressed a little odd. As some people were coming in, I had you to put on some props and things, and I told you you had to wear it. Now, if you're wearing one of these props, I want you to stand up. And we're going to go around, and I just want you to tell me how wearing what you're wearing makes you feel. If you feel any different when you're wearing this. And we'll go ahead and say your name. I didn't have everybody say their name initially, but go ahead and say your name and how wearing this has made you feel differently.
My name is Jeremy Miller, and this has made me feel kind of different. I've developed my character. You want me to read it?
Sure, I didn't, yeah.
My character, his name is Ox. Because ox, you know, they have strength, spiritual strength. And Ox is strong in moral standards and principle. He despises evil and loves justice. He hates violence but knows it's necessary when there's a threat to peace. It hurts him to sign up to go kill, but he knows it has to be done. It's a bittersweet time for him, so he's torn. It's a daily fight with feelings and emotions of fear, anxiety, anger, and courage.
Wow.
So that's kind of what my character is. So he signed up for the war. He's ready to go, but he's struggling. It's like,
Cool.
it has to be done.
And y'all don't have to go into that in depth. He's an overachiever here. Okay.
Hello, my name's Ian McGuire, and the hat, my character's Luke, and the hat kind of made me makes you feel more patriotic because it's got the red, white, and blue. It's the old, old style and stuff. And Luke, I kind of thought would be one of those younger guys that's real excited. He wants to be a patriot. All his friends are going off to war, but really, he's obviously scared because he doesn't want to lay his life on the line, even though he can't tell that to people because he doesn't want to seem like a coward. On top of the fact that he doesn't even really understand why he's going to war. So that fear and confusion that you talked to, I'm going to work that into how he wants to do what he needs to do, but he's not sure if he's going to be able to once the task is at hand.
Cool.
My name's Xavier Kennard. My character's name is Rich. He's a regular, everyday guy. He's a church member. He's somebody who, he goes to church, but he's not really in the church. He's just kind of there. So he's just your regular, basic, everyday guy. This hat kind of, he doesn't really wear hats, so this kind of is a little different for him. But yeah, he's just your basic, everyday guy, sits in the back of the church kind of guy. So.
As I was gathering things, one thing, how many of y'all have already started like kind of getting into 60s, like watching 60s TV shows, or, go ahead and raise your hand if you've done something to kind of get into the 60s. It's kind of fun when you start looking into it. I mean, there's on Hulu, on Netflix, there's a ton of old, 60s shows, movies, and they each create a different world. I don't know if you've noticed, like the world of, each show is completely different. Even though they may have been made at the same time, they each create a different 1960s world. And so it's kind of cool to look at all the different ones, and, we'll be creating our own world. One thing, it was so funny this week, we went to the city to see we've been looking for our hippie hideout. And we had this vision of what we thought. We kept running into roadblocks because we need a place that's like near a bathroom so people can change, and we didn't want it to be all sun, so everyone's getting all sunburned. So we were looking at all these different options. We had people that had property, and then they were going to be out of town. And so finally we discovered that the city had a park where it had a kind of secluded area where we could work at. And so we went to the city and we're describing it. And we said, the name of the movie is Summer of '67. We're looking for a hippie hideout. And the guy gets this cautious look, and he's like, okay, there's a couple of things you've said that have gotten me really worried. And I said, okay, it's a Christian movie. He's like, okay. There's different worlds in the 60s. And what we're trying to do...
You said there's going to be clothing, right?
Yeah. yeah, I was like, yeah, we're going to be all clothed. Thank you. But, a lot of times when people think of 60s, they, immediately think of the sex, drugs, rock and roll, which, yes, that was the 60s. But you know what? That same year, they were doing Andy Griffith, there was Family Affair, there was different worlds. And I know, like in the beginning, when we first posted about the Summer of '67 page, somebody immediately commented and said, you can't have a faith-based movie about Summer of '67. It doesn't work. Everybody was sex, drugs, rock and roll. And one of the actors responded and they said, well, I lived in the 60s and I didn't do sex, drugs, rock and roll. My world wasn't that way. And so, as you immerse yourself, the more you watch, you see all the different worlds, and hopefully we'll show them a rural, world. Another thing when you're immersing is the fabric. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but for those of you who are wearing things, does the fabric feel different than modern? It's a different feel. As a rule, I don't feel it's that as comfortable, It's a little stiffer, it's a little, you know, like, I mean, wearing the gloves when you're going to the thing. You know, people nowadays are more relaxed. Now, I'm not going to do it, make everybody, but, you know, technically in 1967, all the women would be wearing pantyhose all the time. So, and it would be really hot. And I read one thing that was even talking about, you know, a lot of times, you know, they're wearing the mini skirts, but you got to have your, you know, fuzz. So, you know, I feel like it's a little bit more uncomfortable if you're putting some of those fabrics and everything. We're going to be eating Sloppy Joe's, which was a popular 60s meal. I'm not going to feed, you know, 60s the whole time, but today y'all get 60s food, and I'm going to try as much as I can. I was looking, you know, trying to get different 60s. That's why I posted the picture of the Sloppy Joe's ad. That's what came up.
Great.
Okay, Rob, tell us about some of your roles, including your claim to fame.
My claim to fame?
Yeah, when you first introduced us, you said your claim to fame was your movie where you had your face.
Oh, I had my face ripped off by a vampire. Yeah, I did that. In a Stephen King movie. It was great, called The Night Flyer. It's about this vampire who flew around in a little small plane. His grave was in the back of the plane. He'd get out and kill people. That was fun. So I've done some fun stuff like that. I've done several films, and I admire Sharon and Fred a lot because they actually can get stuff done. You know, you don't know how unusual that is. It's something to be admired and cherished, and nourished.
Well, it's because we
nurtured.
have great actors.
Oh, aren't you sweet? Of course, I'm not in this movie, which I'm really, you know, upset with you guys. But that's okay. I'll be all right. Because Sharon said she wanted new people, and that's good. I think that's good. Really
Yeah, for
excited
those
to
of
do it.
you who did not hear, when we first started working on, when I was writing this movie, I always liked to picture, you know, who's going to play the roles. And, you know, I picture people I know, oh, so-and-so would be really good at this, so-and-so would be good at this. And I just kept feeling like God was saying, you have no idea who is going to be in this movie. And I'm just like, well, yeah, I kind of do. I know who this is, you know. I just kind of had it pictured. And the more I kept, you know, I just felt like God kept saying, you're going to have a new cast. And I'm just like, but God, I've got all these great people that we've worked with before, and I really like them and everything. And so finally, I'm just like, okay. And I said it to Fred, and he's like, well, that's kind of weird, but yeah, we can cast all new people. And then I said something to Brittany, which in case y'all didn't figure out, Brittany Hurd, who is the casting director, is our daughter. And she's always been a part of our movie, and now that she's married and they live in Oklahoma, she was really excited to be able to do the casting and still have a part. She's always been a part of it, but now she's a part long distance. But anyway, when I told her, she's like, I've been feeling the same way. And so we decided when we cast, everybody was going to be, for each of the roles, we're going to be 100% in agreement on each role. Us and Brittany, Fred and I, Brittany and her husband Clay. And on every single role, when it came down to it, we were all unanimous, and we had all completely new people. So now for background, we decided, you know what? Okay, God said it was okay for us to have other people. I'm like, we cast all the main roles now, and so he's like, okay, that's fine. But I think it's kind of cool because we're getting to meet some new people. So that's
Definitely
why.
so,
It wasn't that we didn't have great people already.
No, I get it. Yeah, it's great to have new people.
Okay, so tell us how you get into character. Oh, tell us some of the different movies you've been in.
Well, let's see, The Night Flyer, that Stephen King film, and I've done movies, you're talking about the 60s and 70s with, I don't know, you know Shelley Long? Okay, so I was in a film with her, and you know Joyce DeWitt. So I've been in some movies with, you know, people you might know. Most of them are, they're not big blockbuster movies, but and I do a lot of commercials and industrial films. Industrial films are films that are shot not for broadcast, you know, like you might, like training film, stuff like that. And I work on television regularly on a show down in Nashville called Tennessee Crossroads. It's one of my jobs. And so I've been really lucky over the years. I was thinking about it as I get older, I think about that stuff. And I've had the chance to do quite a number of very interesting things over my life, and I'm really grateful for that. So.
And now how do you get into character?
Well, I was very interested to hear what you had to say, because you're absolutely right. I remember when I was in high school, the Civic Theater in my little hometown was doing Music Man, so I went down there and I was a townsperson, you know? And I was listening to this, reading the script, and the librarian's name, whether you know the story or not, it's Marion Peru. And she tells her mama, well, every afternoon this guy corners me in the stacks back there and tries to hit on me. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So I decided I'll be that guy. And so every time I'd see her, I'd come out and flirt with her a little bit. She would be on stage. How you doing? Tip my hat, you know, just little stuff. I was just on and off. But years later, she said, you know, I remember that you were out there, you know, you had a little something going. It wasn't just a background guy. I guess you start out with the Word, you know, like in the Bible, the Word was God, and the Word is the script, of course. There's always lots of clues in there. It may be like, and I don't want to tell you stuff you already know, but there maybe it's the way the dialogue is written if you've got any dialogue. If you don't, you're sort of on your own. But if the G's are left off the end of words, you know, that tells you something about about the character a little bit. And so you look at what other people say about the character, and are they lying? You know, you look for hints in the script that can help you bring these things to life. A lot of times a physical thing can be important to. One great actor, Laurence Olivier, he was playing Othello, and he went out and walked around New York and just watched people walk. He studied walks. Oh, that's him. That's Othello right there. So he just adopted that walk and built his character from that. Another movie, Michael Douglas was playing this crazy guy, and he knew they gave him a flat top kind of haircut, and he said, "That told me all I needed to know about that character." You know, he's 50 years old, got a flat top. This is when flat tops weren't popular. So you can find something physical. You can maybe or a mannerism. There's a great stage play, The Caine Mutiny Court Martial, and there's a crazy ship captain, and he's on trial. And in the play and in the film, they have him rolling whenever he gets stressed. He takes out these two ball bearings and he just rolls them around in his hand, you know. And he's sitting there talking, and he's rolling his ball bearings. Just something physical like that can build a whole character on that. So I look at the script and I try to think about what I know about the time period. All the things you said are very, very helpful. Ask yourself, what do I want? Even if you're just sitting in the back of the church, you ask yourself, what do I want in this scene? Do I just want to get out of here and go eat lunch, beat the Methodist to lunch? Or am I waiting to meet somebody who's coming out of the church? Or why am I here? Maybe I came to go down to the altar and confess today. You know, maybe I'm accepting Jesus today. So, but all those things would affect the way you'd be there that day in the church, in the crowd scenes. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? It is true what Ms. Sharon says about that time period. In 1967, I was alive, and I was in high school, and I lived in a small Texas town. And we knew nothing about hippies and war. And then I went down to college at the University of Texas at Austin, a very liberal school, and now I found all about it, you know, because I teach college, I tell my students this, and they don't hardly believe it, but there were basically riots on the campus just about every week. The ROTC building was firebombed on the University of Texas campus while I was there. I didn't do it, but I mean, I was there. And so I was just dumb and trying to get through college, and all this stuff was going on around. How could you not be affected by that, you know? And you're talking about you're looking for your park. There's a place in Austin called Hippie Hollow. It's out on the lake, and clothing is still optional out there at that place. So I mean, it was a time, and something that probably not going to be covered in this film, but the birth control pill, changed the way people related to each other. I mean, it's honestly the truth. So all that stuff was going on. And so if you can find, clothing can help you, you know. I remember thinking about clothing when you mentioned it in the 60s, that double knit. You know that double knit
Oh, we've got
stuff?
some over there, yeah.
That stuff was hot. It was like plastic. If you set it on fire, it would just, So, there's my friend Don Day. He's a fine actor. He knows, he was probably maybe alive back in those days too, so.
Oh, he's going to be talking to us too.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Don't believe anything he said. Let's see. Go ahead, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask you what you've learned over the years that you wish you had known when you were first starting.
Get a good pair of shoes because you got to take care of your feet. I'm kind of serious. I have a friend who's she's an assistant director on commercials, and her advice is she brings 2 pairs of shoes because she put there. See, they learned that lesson because about midday your feet are going to kill you. I guess if I had to, what have I learned? Well, pay attention. Spencer Tracy is maybe the best film actor ever. If you don't know who he is, but watch some of his movies. You just can't take your eyes off the man. And he's a short, fat guy. He's not particularly good looking. There's a scene in a movie called Bad Day at Black Rock where there's another great actor, Robert Ryan, who's up there standing up over him, threatening him, doing all this stuff, and Spencer Tracy's sitting here like this, and you can't take your eyes off him. What's he gonna do? You know? So he said, to be a film actor, know your lines, show up on time, and don't run into the furniture. That's what he said. But he had such a natural ability. He was kidding about that last one.
Well,
So-
that's good advice, though.
Well, it is good. Try not to- especially if it's this vintage furniture that you brought from the 1960s. You don't want to run into that. But these films, this film that you're going to do with Sharon and Fred is maybe different from any that you'll do because it's just a different feel on the set about it. You know, nobody's yelling at each other. At least I never saw it. You know, nobody's angry, or if the things go bad, well, we're just going on and do it. You know, they work fast. They're very efficient. They get good. Fred shoots good pictures, really good, and but they don't waste a lot of time. You know, so it's a great experience you're going to have. Really, to show up, know your lines, think about your character. Maybe you need an accent. Ask her about, you know, if she don't.
If it's natural.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you've got a crush on the girl sitting across from the aisle in the church. You know, I don't know. But you can find stuff that make even if you're the third policeman standing outside, you can shine. You know, you can see a real, honest to goodness character there.
Well, thank you.
Well,
Oh,
you're very well.
did you
No, I
have
got
questions
nothing.
for him?
Do you have any? Can I answer any questions? Yes. Yes, sir.
There was an actor you mentioned.
Who?
There was an actor that you mentioned.
Yeah.
To watch to become a better film actor. Not Robert, but somebody before.
Spencer Tracy?
Yeah.
He was a big star in the 40s and 50s, 30s. Just watch him because he's so natural. I guess we think, people who study this stuff think the greatest actual film star maybe was Cary Grant. Because that guy, he was just, you know, he was just great. Just show up. But that's a whole different generation, and acting styles change and everything. But it's one thing about film acting, I think, is, and Sharon can tell you all this, less is more a lot of times. Because here's Fred's camera. It's going to be right up in your, he can put it right here. And so you don't have to do this. You can just, raise your eyebrow.
Which that reminds me of a story I was going to tell, which I didn't tell. But when I used to, I told you I didn't do film, but I was like, I love doing stage plays. I love doing monologues. And I had this one that I did called Please God, I'm Only 17. It was a Dear Diary thing. And I started doing it when I was like 15, and I was still doing that monologue long past when I was 17. And I loved doing it, and I, just thought it was brilliant. And then I had an opportunity to have this college professor who was a very respected theater, guy who was going to critique me because I was getting ready to do it for this pageant. And so I gave it all I had. And this is about this girl who's in a car accident, and so she's coming back and she's telling about the car accident and she's pleading with God to not let her die. So I was like, please, God! And I thought I was incredible. And he just looked at me and he was like, okay, no. And his advice was less is more. So he's like, instead of screaming, whisper. And instead of crying, try not to cry. And that was the best advice I ever got. And way more so with film. Underacting is going to be a lot better than overacting any day. So.
Yeah. And, it's because when if a film camera's right there, if you have a conversation, if you weren't here, I would just be talking to you like this. And you don't have to yell or scream. Yes, sir.
What is some techniques and advice that you give to easily remember and memorize your lines?
If you find any, let me know, will you? Especially as you get older. Not that you're old, Don. Probably old as I am, but it gets hard. Well, I've got it's hard, isn't it? I wish there was some. You just if you can get somebody to run them with you, like wife, girlfriend, somebody who wants to, Or my brother introduced me to an app. There's actually an app you can get that will read your lines back. You guys probably know more about this than I do. But you can put it on your phone and it'll give you cues. It's just, you just have to memorize them. And I'm kind of the worst at that, especially as I get older. I can't remember. I have to check and make sure I put my pants on in the morning. Sometimes I forget stuff. Yes, ma'am, what do you say?
What is that app called? I have not heard of it before.
Gosh. And there's 2 or 3 versions apparently, one for Apple and one, I don't know. See, I got a flip phone, okay? So I have a dumb phone. But you can find it, and I think that's or before apps, I would record them. I would record it on a tape, and I would listen to it in the car. Because I'm in the car a lot going, so I would play that instead of listening to the radio or something. Some actors will just go through their lines and they'll just take all the punctuation marks out. If it says exclamation mark, forget it. Just see what you think about it. And talk to the director. She's going to tell you if you're messing up her movie. But I don't think I've never run into a director who hated it when you brought your own ideas. And because a lot of times, if they're any good, they'll steal them and put them in the movie and make the movie better. So.
Now, I'm not one of those writers. I actually have heard people talking about how, these words are ordained and we don't change a single word. I know I'm not that brilliant, and I just cast brilliant people. And so I trust y'all, but at the same time, a lot of times, like a particular word is there for a reason. So I don't really like improvisation on the spot. But if you're reading and you're like, Sharon, this just does not flow. This does not work for me. Let's do something better. I want it to be the best it can be. But now we once had an actor who just changed every time he did it. Well, that's really frustrating if you change your lines every time you say it. It makes it hard continuity-wise. It makes it hard. He was very funny, but he would change the lines, and it was funny then, but it changed things later on in the script. So, each word can be there for a reason. This is setting up, this coming up, so.
It's a fun thing about a movie. It truly is a collaboration. I mean, these guys they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but you got to do your part too, and you make things a lot better. And you get a chance to try stuff. What fun is that? You're making a movie. For gosh sakes. It's supposed to be fun. I think, isn't it, Don? Once in a while it is. Usually sometimes, sometimes not. You're out there 3 o'clock in the morning standing on a bridge. trying to get a shot, well, that's not so much fun.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Rob.
you, man, appreciate it. Y'all have a good time.
But, that's what I want to talk about is the situation and your relationship with the other characters. Because you're not in a bubble. You're relating with these different people. When you're researching and you're doing your backstory, thinking about, how this situation affects you. Now, a lot of the guys talked about, how it would feel like to know. And I've talked to a lot of people from the Vietnam War that were veterans, and it's kind of interesting hearing some of them. I haven't met anybody that said, I could not wait to go fight in the Vietnam War. I know there were some people, I just haven't had the privilege. But one of the men at church was talking about, he was in college, and the way they would do it is they would literally have like this lottery where they would draw the numbers based on your birth date and all that. And he remembers being in the dorm, and they would have, the lottery where they would draw it, and literally they would pull out the number, and then some guy, the guy would know that was his, and he said you could hear those guys crying in the dorm when their number got called. And so, it was just, we think of like with World War II and with World War I, there was a lot of patriotism and, we're going to go make things right. With Vietnam War, it was a lot more confusing. People didn't know why we were fighting. People didn't know what it was all about. And it was mandatory, And so one thing that I discovered, and, that's really interesting, I was always curious, well, why did people enlist? Like my dad, as y'all know, the story is based on with my parents' story, because my dad was on the Forrestal, and I always wondered, why did people enlist if there was all this? And the reason is because if you enlisted, you got to choose which branch you were in. And so by choosing the Navy, he knew he would be on a carrier or, you weren't directly like in the Army if you're there in the jungle or whatever. And so it was considered a safer, which is kind of ironic, that then it ended up catching on fire. And so it was at risk. But there are some references in the script to that of, we chose the Navy because it was the safer of the choices. And I've read a lot of different, military accounts, and that was one of the things that they did. And so that's what if you get a chance to, and we're going to be talking with Don in just a second. Don was actually on the USS Forrestal when it caught on fire, along with my dad, and is it like 5,000 different sailors that were on it? And the thing that always struck me when I was growing up, hearing the story, is that, they heard on the news the Forrestal's caught on fire. It involved John McCain, which, y'all have heard of him. It was his plane. It was not his fault. He didn't do anything, although he's gotten blamed, like he's the one that started. It wasn't him. But, my mother is in this small town. She hears on TV the Forrestal's caught on fire, and it was 3 days before anybody came to give her any news on it. And so, all those wives and, mothers and everything just waiting. You could see it on TV, what was going on, but you didn't know if your person, was going to make it. And so, Don, if you want to go ahead and come up. Okay, so I asked if I had never, I had heard of the Forrestal growing up, but it was a story that I had not seen much about outside of my family. So when I wrote the story and posted it, immediately Don's like, I'm so glad somebody's telling this story. I was there. And so it's going to be kind of cool that he was there. He knows what it was like. And so, Don, tell us first how you got there.
Well, I had just graduated from college in Philadelphia, and there's the draft, and everybody had to go in. And I recall in my high school class of 50, only 3 of us went to Vietnam. Everybody's trying to get out, join the reserves, or their fathers got them out somehow. It was really a tense time, and so I joined a reserve unit. It was a security unit. I got a top secret security clearance, and a year later I had the option of either staying home for a year or going in. So I went in for two years, and they assigned me to the Forrestal. And they assigned me to the intelligence unit because I had a top secret security clearance plus, and had a college education. As a yeoman, I enlisted. because I just wanted to go in for 2 years and get out, really, because I was with a corporation at the time, Sears. And they tell you to pay attention to things aboard the ship, and really nobody pays attention to that. But I was assigned to this intelligence unit, and I knew all the pilots. They came in twice a day. We'd brief them on the bombing rates. I didn't do that. I mean, I was enlisted. I was a yeoman, just administrative. But all the pilots would come in twice a day and be briefed and then go out and do their strikes. And occasionally there would be a general quarters drill, and they'd say it was a drill, and you'd go to your space and be, your heads were counted. Once there was general quarters, and they said, this is not a drill, this is not a drill, this is not a drill. So you run to your spaces. I was on the third shift at the time, asleep, and I get up and I run to my spaces, and everybody's there. In fact, the guy I reported to was underneath my desk hiding. He was a second-class photo mate. I was a seaman at the time. And the bombs were going off overhead. And we were one level down from the flight deck because they didn't want the pilots to walk too far to get to the flight deck. But I would see John McCain every day and all the other pilots. John was, he never talked to anybody. He was a nice guy, though. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know anything about the bombs going off. Just to give you a little information on the bombs, there were 16 World War II bombs that they unloaded the day before, and they were leaking, and they were actually stored in the Philippines under huts, and they had a lot of moss on them, and they were in the original crates from both Korea and the Second World War, and they were running out of 1,000-pound bombs, and that's where we got them. And the captain didn't want to really use those bombs, and he said to I guess his superiors, don't want to, miss a day of bombing, so he had to use them. But 5 of them went off because a rocket went off on a plane and hit another one, and then they exploded. They're supposed to cook off in around 10 minutes, but it took a minute and a half, and all 5 of them went off. I brought a Life magazine here of pictures of what happened. But the fire lasted a day and a half, and the next day the hospital ship Repose was there to take off the injured. There were 134 that were killed, 165 were injured. I remember one thing, on board, we were the flagship, and there were 2 other carriers. And we had the Admiral staff on with us as the flag. And so there was another Admiral, a captain, commander, lieutenant commander, and they all had life jackets on. I had to go downstairs to do something down in the spaces, and these guys had life jackets on, and they were the only people on the ship that had life jackets on. Can you imagine what kind of morale that was for everybody? But anyway, the fire lasted a day and a half, and then we went to Subic Bay, Philippines, for a couple of days, about a week maybe. At that time, you could call home, and it was like 3 days before we got to the Philippines. And my parents were, and I was married at the time, I still am, were waiting for some kind of call as to what happened, because it was a big thing on TV, et cetera. And I was able to call them because I knew they were home, and they told my wife that we were returning in about 2 weeks. After they refitted a little bit in the Philippines, it took 2 weeks to get back to Norfolk. Actually, we went to Mayport, Florida first, offloaded the bodies and the pilots that lived in Florida. And then went back to Norfolk and refitted 8 months, and then made another med cruise. It was an event in my life that, you know, stuff you don't forget. It kind of sticks with you, you know, after seeing all those charred bodies lined up on the flight deck. But you do what you had to do. Everybody was scared not to do what they were told to do. And so you paid attention, and you didn't disobey anybody, and you just did what they told you to do, basically.
Okay, well, thank you, Don.
Sure. I have a magazine.
Okay, while Michelle is on her way, what I want us to do is I want to make sure at each table, and so we may be doing some swapping around, but at each table, I want at least one person who was alive in '67 and can remember it, at least one person who was born, you know, then, but like, you know, I mean, I was 1 year old, I have no memories of it, you know, so for those of you who, you know, somebody who was at least born then, and at least somebody who was not born in any way in the 60s. So you may need to swap around, and then I want y'all just kind of, you know, asking questions to the people that were alive in the 60s. I want y'all talking amongst you. I see some tables that are going to have to move, so there's two different types of costumes. There's period correct and there's period inspired. When Brittany used to do Civil War reenacting, the period correct is where, I mean, you go so far as you're wearing the period corset, you know, everything. You're not using any modern, you know, zipper buttons, all that. The period inspired is where you may have a zipper, you know, it's modern fabrics and everything. I would love to be period correct the entire time, but there will be period inspired. But we're going to try to keep it as much period correct. Just like, you know, you may look at this and you say, this looks hippie-ish. Well, yeah, it does, and it helps me get into that mode, but this would not go into the movie because this is, you know, modern. And so my goal is that when people look at it, they will not be able to tell that this is a modern movie. I mean, there will be errors, you know, we're not flawless, and especially we're having the hardest time with the military. Because men now are bigger than they were back then. And so, you know, if you're military, you may have your pants pinned together because they're too small. You know, it just may happen because men were very small back then. But anyway, costuming is very, very important to me because it tells the story. When people look at it, you know, that's what they see. And so you know that I'm very passionate about this. I have been collecting costumes. I have been sewing. I've made close to 40 costumes. I have been purchasing a ton every time. We're constantly looking. Katie back there ran into some great, a whole like ton of them. And so we've got a lot of costumes. The cool thing for men is that it hasn't changed a whole lot. Men's clothes are about the same. They just kind of wear them differently. The men's pants, you know, the khaki, the blue, they're pretty much the same. But most of the time they would have the pants with the shirt tucked in with a belt. They didn't wear pleats a lot. They did have pleated pants, but they weren't as popular. They also, I don't know, I mean, I wasn't personally there remembering it, but if you look, they tended to wear white socks with dark shoes. I don't know why, and the pants are a little bit shorter, so you can see that. Also, the men, you know, they wear the undershirts, and a lot of times they button their shirt all the way up. And so the polo shirts, like, you know, how, like Jeff has his shirt, he would button the polo shirt, the top button. You know, it's just these little things that give it that kind of cool period look. Shoes, I'm not as particular about shoes, but obviously, you know, like modern, you know, tennis shoes, that's gonna jump out at people. So we're gonna be nondescript, you know, like Keds type shoes or men's dress shoes, you know, that are in a solid color, like the deck type shoes. All those are you know. And plaid shirts, the cool thing about men in plaid shirts, men have been wearing plaid shirts, best I can tell, since, any of us were alive. They've been wearing plaid shirts, so.
They found them in the Stone Age caves.
Yeah. So we're pretty safe on that. We have bought a lot of the leisure type suit jackets, so we're going to have fun with some of those, really playing with it. I think I forgot to mention, when we're in all the scenes, you are your character. I don't care if you're in the way back and there's no way that we can hear or see, you are that character instead of yourself. So when you're having conversations with people, I don't want to do the peanut butter thing that you do like in theater. I want y'all talking as your character in the background, and that doesn't mean like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Well, duh, they already know. They're at your wedding. Of course they know who you are. I want you talking about, the weather. I want you talking about the Vietnam War. I want you talking about, school or the kids or whatever your character might be talking about in that situation. So while we're getting lunch set up, I want you as your character talking to the people. You already know these people, so you don't have to introduce yourself. I just want you having a conversation like you would be having.
I'm a church lady. I am helping get
Oh,
set up
good.
with the faith.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much.
I'm winning. I named myself winning.
Oh, cool. A lot of you have probably seen Michelle before. She's been in a ton of different things, and you see her on TV all the time.
Thank you, Lord.
Okay, Michelle, you can have a seat if you want, or you can stand. It's up to you. Okay.
Can y'all
now-
see me? Or do you want me to stand up?
I think
I'm all for y'all.
We've been
Okay.
sitting, yeah. Okay, so I already gave them kind of a brief introduction, but I want you to tell me, why did you choose to go into the military?
Okay, so believe it or not, I grew up in Germany, and my senior year we came back to the States. There is no way you can have that type of independence and then come back to the States and work at Beefy's. Okay, y'all are mostly younger than me. So you might not know what Beefy's is. Beefy's is like this little hamburger place, nowhere near like McDonald's. It was like a little bitty box, and they sold hamburgers. There was no way I could live in Germany where I had all this freedom and all this independence and then come back and work at Beefy's, because that's what was hot back then, you know what I'm saying? Working at Beefy's, so I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it, so the easy way out for me was the military. What are they gonna do? They're gonna clothe you, they're gonna feed you, you know what I'm saying? They're gonna give you these wonderful free trips to all these different places, So I knew that was the move I had to make for me. I needed that independence. So it was 1 year. I came back for 1 year, and I'd signed the papers, and my family found out when the recruiter was knocking on the door. It was an interesting conversation. Because my dad was like, no, I want you to go to Austin Peay, I'll pay. And at the time, I had received a full ride scholarship to Lipscomb. No, I had to go. I needed my independence, So I joined the military, and it worked for me. It really worked for me.
So that was my next question. How did it compare with what you thought?
Well, first and foremost, it was a job. Okay? So regardless of what job you have, you still have to do your job. So the military was a job, but I also lived upstairs from where I worked, because when I first came in, I joined, believe it or not, as a smoke generator repairman. Can you believe that? 63 Juliet, quartermaster and chemical equipment repairman. Who has seen anything like that since MASH? You remember TV show MASH, right? That's what I went to school for. Now, mind you, I was good at what I did. I mean, I was third in my class. The two people below me or in front of me, they were guys. So I knew my job. But when I got to my first duty station, my first sergeant said, "Can you type?" Now, mind you, my first duty station was right back to Germany. And I got there in the winter. Oh, yes, honey, what you want me to type? I don't have to go to the motor pool in the snow. Yes, I can type. What do you want, coffee? I will do coffee, whatever you want. So, I would do my job during the day and then walk up the stairs and live in the barracks. So it was a sweet deal. I didn't even know how to drive until I was 21, because I didn't need it. you know? I didn't need it. So, it was a job, but it was a good job. It taught me so much. So much. Like I said, I went to school for smoke generator repairman and became a personnelist, you know, where you're with people and you're doing their pay for them. You know, you're doing, well, you're doing the bad stuff too, you know what I'm saying? If they get in trouble, you got to do, you know, those Article 15s and stuff too. But being with people, that is me. I like that interaction, you know, getting to know people. But at the end of the day, knowing that you've done something to help them. That was, I mean, it was a very fulfilling job, mentally and spiritually for me.
Now, you've been in some more dangerous kind of situations. Tell us about that.
With the military, of course, it's not all roses, if you will. It's the military, which means when you sign those papers, you know you are saying yes. When it's time for me to go downrange to deploy me, I am willing, I am able, let's do it. I was deployed 4 times, and it's rough. It's extremely rough. The first time I was deployed was the first major war that we've had in a really long time, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So there was nothing. Like how now, my other 3 deployments after that, oh no, there's buildings and you have a bed and all this. No, it wasn't like that for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. We got there and there was tents. And that was it, okay? We had to build latrines or bathrooms, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Showers, we had to be bussed to take showers. Getting our clothes washed, we had to be bussed. I mean, so all of this stuff that, the niceties, if you will, that we're used to, we didn't have those things. We didn't have those things. And for me, I had just gotten married. Just got married. He was on orders to go to Panama. We got married, 2 months later, bam, it came down, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Everybody's orders that was getting ready to PCS. That means permanent change of station. That's when you leave one station and you go to another. My orders got canceled because no, it's a war going on. That's what's important. You have to go to war. So being newly married, getting thrown out here to the desert, it was rough. It was extremely rough, you know, hearing missiles going off, you know what I'm saying, hearing the shots firing all day, all night, you walking with your weapon, you know, it's not like that now, but you have your M16A1, that's what we had back then. You have it, you're carrying it because this is your life. This is not a game, this is your life. Someone starts firing, you need to be able to have, you know what I'm saying, your magazines, pull out your magazine and do what you have to do to survive. It makes you grow up real fast. But it makes you appreciate the things when you get back, though. Mm-hmm.
So now you've recently kind of developed a platform of the difficulties that people face as a result of what you go through. So tell us a little bit about that.
July 3rd, 2016, my fiance committed suicide. He was also in the military. The difference, though, he had never been deployed. PTSD isn't just a military disease or sickness, if you will. We are hearing so much more about it now because of the military, but PTSD can come from any type of stress, you know, trauma. It stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. So you could see something that is so overwhelming to you, and it can cause that. And for him, that's how it was. Since he was 3 years old, he saw his name on a headstone. His father had committed suicide when he was 3, and they had the exact same name. So his stuff started way early, way early. It's rough. It's extremely rough. When you're the person who's done all the deploying and all this stuff, and then you get with someone else that they have all of this built up stuff that they've experienced in their life. And it makes it hard on a relationship, and in the end, as I experienced, you know, he couldn't take it anymore. You know, he needed to be out, so he took himself out. Since that happened, I try to speak out any chance I get. If there's any event going on that's talking about PTSD or bullying or suicide, I try to give my story, because how many times do you hear about the survivors, the people that's left behind, that's still trying to pick up the pieces of their loved ones that decided to check out? You know what I mean? There's so many stories about, you know, the people that's going through their stuff and they end up, but what about us that's left? Right. You don't hear too many about that, you know? So I try to talk to people and let them know that, one, there's nothing you can do. You know what I'm saying? When someone feels that their life is over, there is nothing you can do, you know? Believe me, I thought, because I was so naive, our love would take care of everything. Honey, I am that person that Cinderella and Snow White, you know, with the little birds going around their head. That is me. I believe in love at first sight. I believe in, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, you can't control somebody else. And your beliefs and what you do, if they don't live their life like that, if they don't see it like that, they're just not going to get on board with that, you know? So anytime I can talk to anyone and share my story, that's what I do.
Okay, is there anything else you want to share?
What do you guys want to know?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yes.
Because I'm an open book, so what do you want to know?
Hey, Michelle.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about the newest thing in your life that just happened that Sharon and I and Amelia Kent went to recently, and all those medals and this and that.
Okay, so she's referring to, thank you God, my military retirement. I retired from the military with 21 years on April the 7th. The ceremony was on April the 1st, the retirement ceremony, but the actual date was April the 7th. So glory be to God that I made it through everything I've gone through, that I made it. And I mean, I had got out for 10 years and went back into the military. So truth be told, it should have been 31 years, okay? But I got out after my experience with Desert Shield, Desert Storm, which I didn't mention. While I was there, I said that I had been married. I had just got married. While I was there, my husband died. Yeah, he had an aneurysm. So he died while I was deployed. And he was military as well, but, you know, war, they send whatever specialty you have, that's how they send you. So during that time, I was personnel, but I was in a maintenance unit. And back then in the Army, well, you know, we're foot soldiers, which meant, you know, you have vehicles. So they needed those overseas, you know, downrange. So I got deployed and he didn't. And while I was gone, he died of an aneurysm. So I got out for 10 years after that, and then came back in later once. I was like, you know what, I'm good with the military, you know what I mean? I mean, this is what I know. I'm a people person, you know, so I knew I needed to be back in to help some kind of way, you know? So, but yes, I retired, so. And I went and got my retirement ID card. That was weird.
And she got all kinds of like awards and commendations.
Medals, all kind of medals.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So anyone else have any more questions? I mean, come on. I mean, my life is open to you, as you see. Ask me, you know. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not really sure like when you started acting, but that can be in the question 1 of part A.
Yes.
And how did you balance that with your active duty military career?
Okay, so let me tell you. I started acting and modeling 7 years ago. I attended John Casablanca in Brentwood, Tennessee. So let me, even though you didn't ask, Everyone's gonna be like, oh, I'm so miserable. She's just so depressing. But okay, I started modeling and acting because I went through a bad relationship. And during that time, as people do, you're grieving that relationship. You know what I mean? So you stop eating and you're just crying all the time. Well, I lost weight. So, yeah, I used it, exactly. I was like, you know what, I'm transparent now. You can practically see through me. Let me see how this is gonna work out. So I did, I went and auditioned, because you have to audition to go to the school. Went and auditioned and, you know, they signed me up. And it's a school, so please let me step back before I finish answering the questions. It's a school. So school means you have to pay to go to school. A lot of people don't understand that. I've heard so many things about John Casablanca and other career centers because they think it's an agency. It's not an agency. Yes, there's a section of them that is the agency part, but that's a school, which means they teach you the basics. You know what I'm saying? About getting headshots, about, you know, learning from a teleprompter, about doing your own makeup. It's a school. Okay, so now let's go on. So once I went through school and everything 7 years ago, which is crazy because I went through, finished in April, and I went to this really good audition. It was for a national commercial. And I don't know how many people actually follow me on Facebook. I had posted yesterday, because you know they have your timeline of stuff a gazillion years ago. So 7 years ago, I had posted a little message, and it says, one thing that I really do not like. And then then I said, when you're asked, do you have anything stopping you on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? And then I've got ... and I was like, yes, deployment. Because I was still in, and it really happened. I had a callback audition and went to the audition, and they asked me that, and I was deploying in like a couple days. I could have just said, you know, don't go to the callback or whatever, but no, I wanted to know, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Was I gonna make it? And I did. I made it to the callback just to find out that, well, I can't even take it, because I was leaving. But so with that being said, with the military and the acting, so when I got out the first time after Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I came back in the National Guard. So National Guard, let me explain it. That's 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends a year, or when you go to your annual training, that's for 2 weeks. And then of course the deployments can be however long. You know what I'm saying? Because I did one that was a year long. So with the acting and modeling, that's what actually pushed me to retire now. Because they were starting to conflict, even though it was just the 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends out of the year, but those deployments is what was doing it. Yeah, because it's like, first and foremost, you know, it's hard to even get internet. You know what I'm saying? To be able to keep up, to apply for stuff, and then to not even know when you're coming back. So it hurt. It hurt. But for 7 years, I stuck it out. But then last May, I said, you know what? It's time. It's time. I'm starting to turn down too many auditions and callbacks because of the conflict. So I said, I'll have my 20 years. I had my 20 years in last February. So I was like, you know what? I'll stretch it out to 21, you know, just to say, yes, I did that +1, and then it's time to get out. So there was a conflict. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir?
If you could give yourself any advice when you were 18, and your 18-year-old self is sitting there next to you, what would you say to yourself at 18?
You know what? Oh, my Lord. It's crazy because now that I'm seasoned, I would definitely tell myself, don't let anyone stop you from what you want to do. You know, I think that's why now I have gotten as much as I've gotten. And what I mean by that, like all the gigs and all that stuff, because when you're, I'm gonna use it again, seasoned, you don't let certain things bother you. Like when you're young, you know, oh, you know, I don't have the right hair color, I don't have the right eyes, I'm not the right weight, I don't, you know, my teeth are this. All those trivial things that actually can help you now. You know what I'm saying? When you turn on the TV, you see every size, every race, every creed, every gender. You see everybody. You know, you see everybody. So you want to do something, do it. Why not? Who's to tell you that you can't? Especially yourself. Don't let that voice tell you that you can't. I have learned that, and let me tell you, and it's not being conceited or anything like that, but I'm just like, you know what? I know that I give 100%. Maybe that's not what they want. I'm going to move on to the next. You know, that you have to live like that. You have to, because now, I'm going to say it one more time, I'm seasoned. And I gave up a lot of stuff, or didn't try a lot of stuff back then. Like modeling and acting, there's no way in the world I would have tried it back then. There is no way, because I had all these reservations. Oh, you know, you have acne and this, I mean, all this stuff. All this trivial stuff. Ignore it. You want to do something, do it. Do it. Why not? We put people on the moon. You know what I'm saying? So why can't you go out there and get a commercial or a film or whatever? You know, when you look at it like that, it's like, well, yeah, that does sound kind of silly. So, next question. Come on, y'all, give them to me.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any children?
Okay, so, yes, actually I do.
Yay.
My son turns 22, yes, September the 20th.
Yay.
So, yes, I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What's his name? Thomas Deshawn Anderson. Yep, Deshawn, because my, I got married again. So my second husband's name was Ian Sean. So I didn't want it to be the exact same, but I still wanted it to be sort of the same. So I put the D in front of it. So Thomas Deshawn. So, yep. Yes, ma'am.
Michelle, when
Yes, ma'am.
you have spoken to different groups about bullying, what age group do you typically find that might be receptive to it, or that you've had the opportunity to speak to? And I'm specifically wondering about middle school.
Yes,
high school.
and I was gonna say middle school, high school, yes, I've spoken to all of them. And I have to say I was pleasantly surprised at how receptive it was. Afterwards, it was just, I was in awe that so many people, it's like that's their whole life. You know what I'm saying? If someone says something bad about them, or they can't, it's like the world's gonna end because someone doesn't like them or something, you know? And it's crazy because I'm sure when we were that age, we probably felt the same way. But talking to them, so many of them came up to me and was like, thank you. Because I do, I worry, this is what they're saying, I worry about, this stuff, and listening to you, it's trivial. I'm not gonna be here next year, I'll be in another school, or I've already graduated, or whatever. Focus on your next step, They were just very, very, they really took in what I was saying, and it's crazy because as I'm talking to you, it's like I can see their faces. That's why I paused, because I can see their faces, and I felt so fulfilled when I left. You know what I'm saying? When I left those schools, it's like this. And we all probably say it, but how many of us really mean what we say? And I mean, as far as a smile goes a long way. Be nice to someone, because you don't know what kind of day they had. You know what I'm saying? This is the kind of stuff we say, but do you know what that really and truly means to somebody? And those kids, that just tears them down if someone says something bad. Oh, their hair is ugly. Oh, they don't like those clothes. And for someone to say, you look good today. I really like your hair. Oh, that ring is nice. Oh, I like those sneakers. From night to day, it just changes their whole outlook, as it does for us too. Because I know I like hearing, you know what I'm saying? Hey, Michelle, you know what? I like that lipstick. Oh, thank you. You know what? I got it at the mall, okay? And it was at Penny's, and it was on sale. It opens up that conversation, and I could have been having a really crummy day from coming in through the rain, just fussing at all the people that were cutting me off and all this stuff. And something that's small has now turned everything totally different. You know what I'm saying? Just, I'm all happy, like, well, they like my lipstick. Okay, I'll wear it again. You know what I mean? And that's how the kids were. They were just like someone taking the time to actually see something from their viewpoint. Yeah.
Well, Fred says our battery's running dead, and I know people are hungry, but Michelle's going to be here, Don's going to be here, Rob's going to be here while we're eating, so pick their brain, talk to them. If you have not already, find people that you can talk to, you know, that were in the 60s, that were in the military, that have gone through something that your character has gone through.